When you think about Meta, you think about social media. But actually, they're a surveillance advertising company.
Senator, we run ads.
Where they take all the data they can about you and sell it to advertisers.
Data is going to be one of the most valuable things, in tech companies that do nothing but offer you free email and a free search engine are going to be the biggest fucking companies in the world. And it's because of your data.
The data has become the commodity in and of itself. The data is now what has value.
You're followed also everywhere you go in person. Kids' toys that are connected to the internet, robot vacuums, and even your car.
What are all of your smart devices really doing? And what are they sending where?
They had so much data on you and your emotional state and your life that they knew you'd be willing to pay more for that product.
That they're going to start using some of these algorithms to price some of their tickets. They know you're in a tight spot, and so you're going to be charged much more because of that.
And when you said a minute ago, at all times consumers have complete control of their data, that's just not true, is it? By the terms of your own agreement, that just is not true.
Most of us have had one of those moments where it feels like your phone is reading your mind. Maybe you were chatting with a friend about a new lip gloss you wanted to try, and then later that evening you got an ad for it. But while our phones are probably not listening to us, the truth might actually be worse. After all, they don't need to eavesdrop when they already have every morsel of our digital information, enough to predict what we want even before we know what we want. Now, when I started my research for this video, I really just wanted to rant about smart devices and how annoying they've become. But boy howdy, was I ever taken down a rabbit hole. Because as I came to learn, the worst thing about smart devices isn't that they're unreliable and super finicky, but that they serve as the infrastructure for what's called surveillance capitalism. These devices, praised for being cutting edge, are actually just data-hungry little parasites quietly extracting every digital breadcrumb you leave behind and claiming it as corporate property to be tracked, distributed, and monetized. And I know most people don't care that their data is being collected, but the problem runs deeper than we think, because it's no longer just about gathering information on us, but using that information against us to automate our behavior. But that's just the price we pay for free internet services, right? So today we're going to peel back the glossy veneer of smart devices, talk about how they're getting all of our data, what they're doing with it, and how we can push back in a world where smart features are taking over. To start off, I'd like to share this quote with you. A man walks into a Minneapolis area Target, angry about coupons his teenage daughter received for baby clothes and cribs. Are you trying to encourage her to get pregnant? He asks a store manager. Except his daughter really was pregnant. Target had tuned a marketing prediction model so tightly that it could successfully tell what was happening inside her body before even the girl's family knew. While this is a less than ideal situation, it is something we're all familiar with, right? Not the teenage pregnancy, but the feeling like ads are reading our minds.
I've been really coming around to the idea that our phones are listening to us, because I think the personalized ads can be helpful. Like, literally this morning, my friend was showing me her apple picking photos with her new boyfriend, and I swear to God, 10 minutes later, I get an ad for a gun. How does my phone always know what I need? That's amazing.
Like Apple was even recently in the news where they had to pay $95 million to settle a Siri listening lawsuit. But this digital stalking is starting to get out of hand. So to get to the bottom of it, let's first address what we already know and then take a dive into the deeper layers of the surveillance iceberg. We're living in a very strange era of capitalism where for the first time ever, we pretty much have unlimited free resources at our fingertips. As long as you have a device that can connect to the internet, you can look up pretty much any piece of information, connect with anyone from your past, and now with AI, even create anything your mind desires. The information economy is booming and has been one of the most revolutionary moments for humanity. And this is the narrative we're told by the tech giants, right? That they're helping the world by connecting us all.
We're a company that focuses on connecting people.
From the pioneer of the search empire, Google, with their mission statement to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. How inspiring. To the newer players in the game, like OpenAI, who believes that AI should be available and beneficial to everyone, not just corporations, governments, or elites. But as we're all aware, they're not just doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. There's something in it for them as well. Because as they provide users with everything humanity has ever known, they're simultaneously helping themselves to a slice of the pie by collecting data from those very users.
I requested all of the data that Amazon has on me, and here's what I found. I have 2 dots and 1 echo. These are all short voice clips. It's so scary.
And that's just what the exchange is. As the saying goes, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. We know this, but like I said, most people just don't care and sign up anyways because the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. The problem here is that this tracking goes far deeper than we think. So to keep with the iceberg imagery, let's take a dip beneath the surface of the surveillance iceberg, because Google has bigger plans than just saving our searches or helping out other drivers when you confirm or deny the state of construction on the road. In fact, pretty much every tech company, no matter what service they provide, is joining in on what Google started, the business of digitizing the real world. And nothing is exempt in this competition for surveillance revenues. Anything from smart doorbells, smart mattresses, smart scales, smart thermostats, and even smart electric toothbrushes. But what does the smart label really boil down to? Well, that it connects to the internet, really.
This guy bought this LG washing machine that was smart and Wi-Fi enabled. And one day he was looking at his internet consumption and realized that the washing machine was using 3.5 gigabyte of data a day.
What this allows companies to do is add complex capabilities to their products, but also opens up your world to their will. Because your smart TV isn't just smart by connecting all your streaming services in one place, it's screenshotting your shows, identifying them, sending that information to your TV manufacturer, and then selling the information to the highest bidder. But whether that's something you're okay with or not, it's just the reality of the smart industry. In July 2017, iRobot's autonomous vacuum cleaner, Roomba, made headlines when the company's CEO told Reuters about its data-based business strategy for the smart home, starting with a new revenue stream derived from selling floor plans of customers' homes, scraped from the machine's new mapping capabilities. Angle indicated that iRobot could reach a deal to sell its maps to Google, Amazon, or Apple within the next 2 years. In preparation for this entry into surveillance competition, a camera, new sensors, and software had already been added to Roomba's Premier line, enabling new functions, including the ability to build a map while tracking its own location. And this is a perfect example of companies tracking more than we know, because who would suspect their vacuum to be selling our data? But this happens because it's a combination of us being underinformed and feeling like we don't have an option anyway. When we buy a device, we don't read the hundreds of pages of terms and conditions, and even if we did, we still have to press accept unless we don't want the device to work. And the reason the smart industry has taken over electronics is for one reason, because it's so lucrative. Because we live in a capitalist society with open markets, companies are under constant pressure to show growth quarter after quarter, and the best way to do that is in the data collection business. Often it's even their primary business model, not to sell you an expensive product, but to continuously extract data from you for profit. Some companies even go so far as making minimal, if any, profit off of the device because their main moneymaker is the data.
Is it just me, or smart TVs like super damn slow?
No, it's not just you. They all suck, and here's why. Because it doesn't matter to them in the end. A good user experience doesn't sell them any more TVs, and so they don't care.
Anything from voice-controlled speakers, Wi-Fi security cameras, TVs, kitchen appliances are probably generating and collecting data, even personal information, without you knowing. And as much as it sounds like a conspiracy theory, it unfortunately isn't. In 2015, privacy advocates discovered that the corporation's smart TVs were actually too smart, recording everything said in the vicinity of the TV. Please pass the salt, we're out of laundry detergent, I'm pregnant, let's buy a new car, we're going to the movies now, I have a rare disease, she wants a divorce, he needs a new lunchbox, do you love me? And sending all that talk to be transcribed by another market leader in voice recognition systems, Nuance Communications. Samsung acknowledges that the voice command aimed at triggering the TV's voice recognition capabilities are sent to a third party and adds, please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted to a third party through your use of voice recognition. Super unsettling. Moving on to the next layer of our surveillance iceberg, it's not just that devices are taking the data that you provide it, but apps on your phone are talking to each other and exchanging information. It's common for tech companies to rely on third-party analytics and advertising tools in their smartphone apps, including some we use to manage smart devices. We tested the top Android free apps in Google Play, and 96% of those popular free apps contained trackers, companies that were different from the owners of the app. 87% of those sent data to Google, and 68% sent data to Facebook. Apps that don't even use your location will gain access to it and track wherever you go just to add another revenue stream for them.
My sister wears a Fitbit. When you think Fitbit, you don't think Google.
No.
But Google owns Fitbit. They bought Fitbit so they could get all that physiological data 24 hours a day.
Even the most innocent seeming applications such as weather, flashlight, ride sharing, and dating apps are full of tracking programs. This may be the final straw for the Weather Network app for me because you already know I struggle with their subscription service, and if they're also tracking me, I can't. But you, like most people, may still not care that your data is being collected because what do we have to hide, right? Like, who cares if Google knows that I'm out of diapers and need to go pick up some more?
You know, there's all this talk in the news about China having my data from TikTok, and then maybe America has my data. Everybody wants my data. What are you going to do with it? Look at it, giggle a little, maybe get a little crush on me? Have it. I want you to. I don't give a shit.
But the problem is that there's still more to the story. This idea that if it's free, then you're the product isn't necessarily true because our collective understanding of the transaction going on is off. It's not just that these companies want to know what city you live in or that you take a cream in your coffee, but to build a complete digital profile of us as an avatar that they can analyze, predict, and monetize. What happens is that every time you open most apps, a series of transactions take place in an instant. Information about you is offered up for auction, and the data brokers around the world bid on a chance to place an ad in your view. The bids are placed on your profile, which include standard information like your age, location, and gender, but also finer details like your personal interests, your desires, and your weaknesses.
A lot of people, I was already very well aware that Facebook was taking my data and using it to make an ad profile to then sell to advertisers to make me buy things. But I feel like a lot of people don't understand the categories that they put you in are extremely specific, and you can see them. I was in a category titled friends with women with birthdays in 7 to 30 days. I didn't even know that. And that has nothing to do with the women whose birthdays are in 7 to 30 days. That has to do with me buying them a gift.
All of these smart companies are in the business of mining every shrapnel of information they can pry off of you and add it to your avatar. Every time you set Google Maps to your workplace, download a fitness tracker, linger on anxiety-related content, or look up real estate sites, this all adds information to your avatar about your routines, your body insecurities, your mental health state, and your income bracket. Inside servers, there is a little voodoo doll, and it's a model of you. It starts by not looking much like you. It's sort of a generic model of a human. But then they're collecting your click trails, everything you click on, everything you search for, and every detail of your life online. They're reassembling all that metadata you don't really think is meaningful so that the doll looks more and more like you. Why is Google Maps free? So the voodoo doll can include the details of where you go every day. Why are Amazon Echo and Google Nest Hubs sold for as cheap as $30? Far less than what they cost to make. So they can gather more information, so the voodoo doll can consist of not just what you search for on a screen, but what you say in your home. Then, when you show up, for example, on YouTube, they're waking that doll and testing out hundreds of thousands of videos against that doll, seeing what makes its arm twitch and move so they know it's effective, and then they serve that to you. And this is something that feels pretty inescapable at this point because every year new products are being smartified and our dumb options are dwindling. The average American home has 17 internet-connected devices silently observing their actions, and more than 40% of households have smart devices. They might have an Amazon Echo, a Roku TV, or perhaps a Google Nest thermostat and a few iPhones. And even for products that don't currently have tracking programs, if they're connected to the internet, then they can easily add tracking in at any time by just throwing up a pop-up on the screen and forcing you to accept if you want to continue using the product. So now I want to take a second to ask, how is that allowed? Because if companies are able to just take what they want without any input from us, then our privacy as a whole is at risk here. So to actually understand what we're up against, it's important to know how we got here. Because surveillance capitalism is an evolution of our good old-fashioned capitalism brought to you primarily by Google. Like most tech companies, they started off with innocent intentions of trying to solve a problem, and they did do that. Google originally only collected data for its feedback loop of information in order to improve search. Whatever users would click on would inform Google that that was the desired result for the inquiry. It was a symbiotic relationship where search needed people and people needed search. There was a slight problem though, and that was that giving away a service for free doesn't make any money. So if Google didn't pivot from just an information resource, it would have died out. The inevitable shift did eventually come when Google started taking a little extra data off the top from its users to sell as behavioral surplus and create a new revenue stream, targeted ads. But this was just the cornerstone of what would eventually become surveillance capitalism. And Google isn't the only bad guy here. Everyone jumped on this train following their success. Like Meta, who we are back-to-back bashing in videos, I guess, but they are pretty horrible, so I don't feel bad about it.
Still about bringing people together.
In fact, in 2007, Facebook introduced its ad platform, which again used user data, but they also launched Beacon, which was a tool that tracked users' purchases on external sites and shared them with friends without permission.
When a Facebook user bought his wife a diamond ring online, the surprise was ruined because Beacon notified all his friends and his wife about it on Facebook.
Well, I guess this shows how difficult it is for a company like yours to make money through advertising and protect people's real privacy and their sense of privacy.
You know, it might take some work for us to get this exactly right. This is something that we think is going to be a really good thing.
Not a real answer to the privacy question, more like the canned response of a typical business executive.
I say that all in past tense because it was quickly met with backlash as their first privacy scandal and was shut down quickly after. To clarify, not because of regulation or law, but because of user resistance. But even still, not much has changed because Meta still tracks users via invisible code and embedded social widgets. What this looks like is that if you just visit a website that has a Facebook share or like button, your data can be sent to Meta. Even if you don't click the button, you're not logged into Facebook, or don't even have a Facebook account. Facebook uses a number of software tools to do this tracking. When internet users venture to other sites, Facebook can still monitor what they're doing with software like its ubiquitous like and share buttons, and something called Facebook Pixel, invisible code that's dropped onto the other websites that allows the site and Facebook to track users' activity. But the reason big tech could do all of this is because it's uncharted territory, right? Like no one had ever needed to regulate online personal data because it just wasn't a thing before the internet. And so it was the wild, wild west.
I remember getting into a huge fight about whether that thing should be opt-in or opt-out. And I remember telling the guy, and I'm not going to say who it is because you guys all know him, and I was literally like, honestly, just shut up and enjoy the success that will come from keeping this as an opt-out.
Tech companies could do what they want without restrictions. And it's how they got the saying, break first and ask for forgiveness later, because they had the freedom to. Take Google Street View, for example. They launched it in 2007 and just started taking pictures of public spaces in the world without asking permission. And some people were not happy about that, to say the least. The application has met with varying degrees of resistance as it expands to countries outside the US. As countries and cultures with differing expectations of privacy has fought to keep the company's image capturing vehicles off their streets. But despite the resistance, they still did what they wanted and didn't let anyone stop them from datafying the world's streets, buildings, and homes. And even when they would hit legal roadblocks, they would just skirt around the issue and make delays, all while continuing to collect data. They create, disrupt, and exploit long before lawmakers can catch up. Like, remember all those clips of the 2018 Facebook trial where Zuckerberg was called to testify before the Senate about mishandling personal data? It was so embarrassing because you had all these old politicians who, bless their hearts, had no idea how Facebook, let alone the internet, worked. Their questions were disconnected from the problem, and it highlighted how unprepared regulators were to oversee big tech.
Well, if so, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
Well, this was the worst side of things, and from 8 years ago, it still is one example of the defense we have against these tech giants. As Google and Meta continue to grow, they only increase their data collection, all while countless other companies rush to join the ride. And as unnerving as all of this is, we haven't even gotten to the worst part yet, because now we know that we're kind of SOL and out on our own here, but most importantly, we need to talk about how these companies use our digital avatars to influence what we see, think, and do. So like I mentioned earlier, the idea that we are the product is flawed because in reality, we're more like the raw material that these companies mine in the first stage of a business model designed to understand what we think, feel, and do. But the real end game is to use that information to shape us into the most profitable resource of all, a predictable producer of purchases.
The algorithm isn't something you curate, it's curating you. It is a common belief that we are somewhat in control of our feeds by consciously liking or following or sharing certain content. In reality, these algorithm-driven platforms are subtly shaping our behaviors and perceptions by using algorithms that prioritize engagement over everything else. And their goal is not just to give you what you want, but to actually leave you wanting more.
It's not about showing someone the right ad. You have to show it at the right place and time, with the language and imagery calibrated for precise effect. You have to lead people through the physical world, making them show up at the sponsored pop-up store or vote for the preferred candidate. Armed with a veritable real-time feed of a user's thoughts and feelings, companies are beginning to practice just this kind of coercion, which is why you might see makeup ads before a Friday evening out, or why inducements from a personal injury lawyer might pop up on your phone as you sit in the hospital waiting room. When we want things, health information, travel schedules, a date, is also when we're most vulnerable, when intimate data yields themselves for corporate capture. We live in a new realm of capitalism where companies can infer thoughts, feelings, and intentions into people in the name of directing them to whatever is best for business. All they have to do is make sophisticated nudges based on who we are, what we want, and what we're most likely to do. What this actually looks like is apps knowing when you're most vulnerable or bored and pushing notifications accordingly. If they know when you're at your weakest, they can coax you into retail therapy because your guard is down. If they know you're about to start a new venture in life, like having a baby, to circle back to the example we started the video off with, then they can sell you products that act as solutions to problems you didn't even know you had, like ads for medicinal drops for colic, bouncers for fussy babies, or blackout curtains for sleepless nights, even if those aren't things that your child actually needs. They just feed into your insecurities of the unknown future of parenthood. Now, to be clear, influencing what people buy isn't new. That's basically just what marketing is. But what we're dealing with now is an entirely different playing field. Today, we are willingly handing over our desires and vulnerabilities to the very people trying to sell to us. These companies don't just collect your data to sell to you, they sell the ability to influence you. And the more they can influence you, the more predictable you become, making it even that much easier to influence you again. The genius and the danger of the system lies in its market logic. The more our actual behavior conforms to these data-driven predictions, the more valuable those data become. This creates a feedback loop where the system refines itself, making us more visible and predictable, which further enhances its economic power. Zuboff warns of the erosion of personal choice and free will. As our lives become more algorithmically managed, our autonomy begins to diminish. So what this means is that companies can use behavior modification to manipulate users into taking actions, and most importantly, making purchases that we otherwise wouldn't have, all with the goal of creating the perfect shopper. Someone whose desires aren't even their own anymore because they've accepted the manufactured desires that machines have chosen for us. It's not so much that the algorithm knows what we want before we do, but that they've already rewired our brain to make us want what it's about to serve to us. And no, it doesn't stop there, because surveillance capitalism has continued to evolve into surveillance pricing, a concept that's been gathering attention over the past year. While dynamic pricing isn't new either, gas prices rise before long weekends or in the mornings on your way to work, it is, however, changing to now include the variable of personal information. Imagine entering a supermarket whose shelves might someday adjust prices dynamically as you traverse the aisles. Perhaps the shelves themselves will vanish, replaced by screens that display in high resolution the products the store deems most compatible with your derived needs and desires. Maybe you'd revolt, but probably you'd just check out. While this does sound like a Black Mirror dystopian future, it is the reality we're facing now. Companies are taking on the strategy of changing their prices based on your personal information, like location, browsing history, and your spending habits. If they know it's something you want, then prices go up. We saw this with Delta Airlines this past month, sharing that they will be using dynamic pricing based on an AI platform that uses data, allegedly personal data, to set those prices. And then we have Uber, who's been in the game for a long time, who increases prices if they pick you up from an airport or an expensive hotel. Uber says we know more about driver and rider behavior, so we can figure out who is willing to pay more as a passenger or accept less as a driver. Since implementing upfront pricing, Uber has increased rider prices, has cut driver pay, has increased its take rates, and of course, has greatly improved its cash flow. The danger this imposes is one that you can probably guess. It takes away our autonomy as it nudges us towards desires that align more with the companies profiling us rather than our own. But what's interesting is that it has been a slow burn to get here. It's not like we woke up one day and discovered that all our personal information had been taken. Taking a little here and a little there, but never enough at once to spark real outrage or meaningful pushback. The trick has been a gradual rollout, a quiet erosion of privacy paired with the steady loss of autonomy. And now we've grown so used to it that we barely question it. We grow numb to these incursions and the ways in which they devour our lives. That this no longer seems astonishing to us, or perhaps even worthy of note, is evidence of the profound psychic numbing that has inured us to a bold and unprecedented shift in capitalist methods. We succumb to the drumbeat of inevitability. Opposition is fleeting, like the sharp yelp of pain when the Novocaine needle first pierces the flesh before numbness sets in. So like I said in the intro, this video started off just in frustration with how annoying smart tech can be, and that led me to finding this book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, which I of course referenced quite a few times in this video. Now, this was a heavy read, and honestly, a major downer. It got into the nitty-gritty of how corrupt these companies are. But as I was reading it, I was really holding out for the end with the hope that at least they're going to give me a solution, something to make me feel not so helpless against the tech giants. And more or less, they didn't. And I don't think it's the author's fault. It's just the fact that we need policy in place to make real changes if we want to stop the tech giants. But that doesn't mean I wasn't crushed when I finished reading it, because what are we supposed to do in the meantime, you know? I honestly had to take some time to process everything because I was feeling super defeated that we have no control over our data. But as I took the time to find solutions, I found that it is not as helpless as I thought. Still rough out there, but not as helpless. In the conclusion of this book, the author says that it shouldn't be on the shoulders of the individual to solve this. And while that's true, it's literally all we have right now. So let's get into it. So the first thing to do is stop buying smart tech. I think for some, this is probably easier than others. I know for me, I don't really care if something's smart or not, so I'm fine with buying the dumb version. But the reason I think this is important to avoid overall is because, like I said earlier, even if technology doesn't take your data now, that doesn't mean it isn't going to take your data in the future. As long as they have internet access to the software, they can update that policy at any time. So I've brought you to my desk to talk about the next action you can take, which is removing your data from the internet. Because if you're anything like me, you're probably feeling super defeated because we're already knee deep in this. Like, our digital footprint is so big at this point because we've been on the internet basically since we could, right? And everything from the Facebook messages we sent to our crush in 9th grade, to the images you linger on Instagram, to the smartwatch data that's been gathered about your health, it's all out there floating on the web for data brokers to scoop up. In fact, 98% of Americans have data that's exposed by at least 35 brokers, with 300 pieces of exposed information per person on average. But I do come to you with good news, because we do have some rights to our data, and one of those rights being the right to request your data be deleted. And thankfully, we don't have to scour the internet and do this on our own, because we have today's sponsor, Aura, who does all the heavy lifting for you. Aura scans people finder and data broker websites for your sensitive information, and when they find it, they begin the opt-out process. This looks like automatically sending removal requests to over 133 data brokers. Aura then rescans broker sites daily and resubmits opt-out requests if your data reappears. As well, some brokers will actually refuse or delay removal or add your data back on later, so Aura will keep sending opt-out requests to keep your information off these sites. They also protect your privacy by requesting removal of your information from Google search results, hiding your identity while you browse, and blocking ads and trackers. And the cool thing is you get to just sit back and relax while you get the play-by-play either on your app or on your desktop like me. You just head to your dashboard to see all of your in progress, completed, or pending removal requests. And I actually have a printed out report to show you all all the data they can find on you. Things like your contact information, your relatives, your addresses, even your neighbors, your social media activity, your photos. It's just crazy all the stuff they can find. And I get to just watch Aura do all that work for me and not worry about my data being thrown around the web. They also offer other security features like a secure VPN and a dark web monitoring. So if you're interested in Aura going to work to protect your private information, then head to the link in the description to try it for 14 days. The thing we need to do next is a little bit harder, and that is to stop giving away our data on the internet. This is where things feel quite a bit more helpless because unless you're willing to give up all your apps or go to a dumb phone, you can't prevent everything at this point. So we do our best. From simple changes like turning off your location for apps that don't need it, to not accepting cookies on web pages. But besides that, I've been focusing on de-Googling my life, and I want to say this has been extremely difficult for me. Not that the actions themselves are difficult, but I am literally these text giants a favorite customer because I hate setting up new technology and I love my habits. So having to go and change my web browser, that is the last thing I want to do. The other reason this was really hard is because I always thought Google was the good guy, probably just because I'm naive and fed into the whole Google is great narrative and even built my career off of Google. How tragically poetic. So it feels like I'm breaking up with someone, okay? And with that, I am so deep in the Googleverse that it's been a big task to pull myself free from their grasp, excluding YouTube. We love YouTube here, right? But I use Google Chrome, Google Maps, Google Calendar, Google Docs, Google Photos, Google Drive, Gmail, YouTube Music. I used it all, okay? But as much as I didn't want to make these changes, it felt like the right move, especially learning about the whole surveillance pricing thing. That is just something I don't want to participate in if I have the ability to opt out, as much as I can anyways. So I'm going to quickly go over the changes I've made in case you're interested. First thing to go was Google Chrome. I replaced that with Firefox and DuckDuckGo. Both these companies apparently are better at keeping your private information private. And honestly, that transition was super easy because they function the same as Google Chrome, essentially. And then I ended up going over to Proton for my email, Drive, and Calendar. Proton is nice because you can just import all of your Google data onto their platform, so I didn't have to put all of my events back into a new calendar. It just took it all from Google. So that was convenient because convenience is key. I do want to note, don't necessarily take all my suggestions as law. I'm picking what's easiest. There's other people online who can give you more thorough options, but this is just what I'm doing. The only Google thing that I didn't have an answer for was Google Maps. There's just not a lot of Maps options out there that are good. Apparently Apple is more secure, so you could use Apple Maps, but at this point I just don't trust the big tech companies, Google already broke my heart. Why am I gonna go trust Apple now? So I am still using Google Maps, but honestly not as much as I used to, because if you remember from my last video, GPS is rotting our brains. So as much as I can, I try to not use it or look up an address and then drive myself there on my own, just trying to prevent breaking my brain more. Overall, if you're like me and just hate all this stuff, I want to note that it really is just a week's worth of switching things over in your spare time, and then you just have to get used to your new normal. It's not that bad. Not to say that I've completely wiped myself off the internet from this, but we do what we can, right? But the main takeaway I want to give you is that these companies are banking on you being a sucker like me and just sticking with what you know, but we don't have to be suckers. This is a classic case of knowledge is power, and you can take back at least some of your data and your autonomy alongside that. To end on a quote from The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, this cycle will be broken when we acknowledge as citizens, as societies, and indeed as a civilization, that surveillance capitalists know too much to qualify for freedom. Most simply put, there's no freedom without uncertainty. So I wanted to put my hat on for final thoughts because I feel very much well-informed and frightened from this video. This was definitely one of the more depressing topics I've covered, but maybe one of the most important? I don't know, you tell me. Because with technology steamrolling us these days, and AI is taking even more information from us to build their large language models, whatever, I feel like now is the time to be well-informed, even if it leaves us a little unsettled. And the changes I've suggested, I know are minimal and aren't a full solution, but I think it's really just the mindset shift and putting the desire out there for other options so that more companies will come up as alternatives. And beyond that, we we just have to hold out for change because things are in the works. Like even in 2020, California enacted their California Consumer Privacy Act, which gives users rights like opting out of data sales, deleting data, and accessing what's collected. So hopefully it's not a battle on the individual level for long. Literally holding on so tight to that thought. But that is unfortunately all I have for you today. If you like my well-informed and frightened hat, maybe go buy one for yourself. All the proceeds go to the SA Foundation. Subscribe if you haven't, if you want more videos like this, or lighter themes, because they're not all as dark as this one. But besides that, I wish you a week of touching grass because I think we all need it. Bye.
I'm trying to enter Google Chrome today, man. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Yo, what's this?
Accept the cookies, man.
Accept the cookies?
Got to accept the cookies.
Man, I don't want to accept no cookies, bro. Watch out.
No, then you can't go nowhere unless you accept the cookies, man. Accept the cookies, man.